Good evening. Call this special called meeting of the Elizabeth City Pasquotank County Board of Education to order. And at this time, we will have a roll call. Ms. Sawyer. Is she not here?
Can I just like add up?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Sharon Ward,
Present.
Andy Ruth,
Here.
Rodney Walton,
Here.
Daniel Smith,
Here.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Present.
Jordan Archuleta,
Here.
Virginia Houston.
Present.
Thank you.
And I ask Board Member Virginia Houston to read the ethics awareness statement for us, please.
It is my duty to remind members, I apologize, good evening and welcome to this special meeting of the Elizabeth City Board of Education's meeting. It is my duty to remind members of the board that it is your responsibility to avoid all conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest in accordance with Chapter 138A of North Carolina General Statutes. As public servants, it is your duty to continually monitor, evaluate, and manage your personal, financial, and professional affairs in such a way as to ensure the absence of conflicts or potential conflicts. Does any member of this board know of any conflict of interest or potential conflict of interest with respect to any matter coming before the board this evening? Let the record reflect that no conflicts exist.
Thank you, Ms. Houston. Now I need a motion from the floor to approve the agenda for tonight, which is school operations related to developing COVID trends within our community.
I make a motion that we go ahead and approve the agenda, which is school operations related to developing COVID trends within our community.
Okay, we've had a motion from Mr. Archuleta, and I need a second from the floor.
Second.
Second from Mr. Spence, and now a roll call vote. Ms. Sawyer.
Andy Ruth,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
Jordan Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. And I want to just say welcome to everyone who has chosen to attend the meeting tonight. We're very glad that you all have decided to attend. We want you to be very involved. Also want to say welcome to those of you who have joined us virtually. And at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Ingram, our interim superintendent.
Thank you, Chair Warden, board members, members of the audience, staff members. Since I've been here, I talked a lot about direction, permission, and cover, right? Direction, permission, cover. We even talked about that back in April when I was conducting a workshop with you. And our COVID numbers kind of give us some direction. As everybody knows, they change daily. And even the numbers that I'm going to read out could be different, probably are different because they change minute by minute. And we are concerned about that. If my arithmetic is right, and I was an English major, so bear with me, the total number of students at the elementary level that are quarantined currently is 130. We'll stay in the elementary level for now. The total number of staff quarantined, close contact elementary, 8. Total number of students that have confirmed COVID test cases, elementary level, these are confirmed cases, 9. And total number of staff that have confirmed COVID positive cases, 5. At the middle grades, we got 56 students quarantined, close contact, 6 staff quarantine, close contact. At the middle school, the 2 middle schools combined, 13 students with confirmed cases of COVID, 4 staff members. High school, a little bit of a different story. 120 students total quarantined. Let's see, staff, looks like we don't have, well, we do have 1 staff member, I think. I don't think this is quite right. Number of students confirmed cases, what I'm reading here is 12 at the high school level, one staff member with one test pending. So totals, high school, total kids at Elizabeth City Pasco Public Schools quarantined 306. Total staff quarantine, close contact 14. Total number of students confirmed cases of COVID 34. Total number of staff confirmed 10. Now, again, I'd like to remind everybody this, I could have just called out something that's not accurate right now because it changes constantly. But we keep up with it daily and we check. So I appreciate our principals and our school nurses and our community for helping us with that. That gives us direction. Now, permission. I want to get to the permission part. There's Senate Bill 654 in the North Carolina General Assembly that was ratified on August 26th. Okay, and I'm going to read it in part. Public school units shall be authorized to provide virtual instruction during the 2021-2022 school year to a student with the consent of that student's parent or legal guardian in accordance with the virtual instruction plan providing the information required by this subsection, if submitted by the governing board to the Department of Public Instruction by October 1, 2021. So they gave us permission to have virtual instruction according to choice. I want to commend the board for last night's meeting, and I apologize for asking you to come 2 nights in a row. But I commend the board for approving up to 25 positions for virtual instruction. And I know people may ask, well, you know, it's kind of tough to find teachers, period. How are we going to find virtual teachers? Well, there are probably some teachers on the sidelines that would jump at the chance to teach just virtually, and we've been in conversation with some of those folks. So that gives us, that helps give us the cover to try to do what I'm going to ask you to do this evening. I want the parents in the audience to know we have heard you. We've been listening, and we started virtual, limited virtual with medical exceptions, documented medical conditions only. But we had lots of people that were saying, you know what, my child is too young to get vaccinated, or I'm really concerned. And you know, I'm a parent and I'm a grandparent. I get it. I've got a granddaughter in a different district who's 11, or she will be 11, and she's unvaccinated. And I was concerned that she didn't have to wear a mask. Now, we made her wear a mask, but you know, but now that district has split and now requiring masks. So, you know, I like to brag on you a little bit. You were the first district, we were the first district that required masks and caught a little bit of heat for that. But now most of the districts in the state have flipped and gone to mask mandates. So it's the prudent thing to do. Nobody likes to wear them. I don't like to wear them. I catch myself, well, oops, I'm not wearing it, got to put it back on. I catch myself driving in the car wearing it by myself. Well, I don't know if any of you have ever done that, but I've done that. Maybe it's part of being 64 years old. I don't know. But it's something that I think is the wise thing to do. And I'm not a medical doctor, so I just want everybody to be as safe as possible. So we're listening to parents. So, and before I get to my recommendation, I want to kind of give you my philosophy of, I'll try to talk louder with the air going on. I don't think it's wise to shut down everything at one time. You know, just like, boom. I think it's the progression. You know, if a few kids are sick in a class, we might have to send those kids home. If there are more kids sick in that class, we may have to shut a classroom down. Or if it's an elementary school, maybe a grade level. Or hopefully not, but maybe it'll get untenable. We may have to close a school down for a period of time. But I don't really think we're at a point where we'd have to shut the entire district down all at once. And that's going to create a challenge for our principals, our teachers, and administrative staff, and I ask you to please be patient with them. It sounds easy. When I say this and it sounds like it's easy to do, but you just can't push a button and make it happen. It's really, really difficult. When we're trying to contact trace and figure out who may have been exposed, who may not have been exposed, we try to err on the side of caution because we don't want anybody getting sick. If we could avoid it. So it's very time consuming. So given that, I would like to recommend that we expand our virtual option so parents that are choosing and asking for virtual be allowed to do that. So pretty soon, Amber tells me there's a survey ready to go pretty quickly, right? She's got the thumbs up. Get that out tonight or tomorrow. I don't want to pin a time on her. She's the one doing it, not me, but it'll go out very quickly. And we'll process these things as quickly as we can. And we'll get our programs in line as quickly as we can. I would like to ask Dr. Amy Spencer to go over an overview of our quarantine instruction and our virtual instruction and what we've been doing so far and what we hope to do pretty quickly. And then after this meeting, I'm going to have a staff meeting at 7 o'clock, I guess, or 6:30, 7 o'clock back at the office. And then we'll do a chat with the public, live chat with the public at 7:30. So we're trying to hit as many folks as we can tonight. So Dr. Spencer, would you mind giving an overview? And I'm sure some of the board may have questions here.
Okay, so it's okay, I'll take this off with the presentation. So we started out with the virtual and we asked for the medical documentation as you all approved. And the survey went out on August 17th. The first day of school was August 23rd. So that's a tight turnaround. And so what we did is we had talked about a lot of different scenarios and what that could potentially look like. And so at the elementary level, we talked about if we had enough students, we would be able to have some students in a class potentially that would be virtual and others that would be face-to-face. But what we found when we reported to the board on August 23rd is that we only had a total of 59 students, K-12. That was reported to all of you. But since that time, we have been getting more students. And I believe, Dr. Williams, you had asked at the last board meeting, is this going to be open the entire time? And what we had found is that that might not be a good idea per se, because at some point in time, students would be changing classes. And I'll give an example. At a secondary level, you have to have a total number of seat hours to earn a credit for graduation, right? And so if you were to go through half of a year or half of a semester, say in band, and then you decided that band, you were going to go virtual because of some COVID issues, then you would have not the option perhaps to have band, and you would only have 9 weeks left in your semester. So then what do? You have a class that you've taken for half of a semester, and then you would be adding another half of a semester of a completely different course. And so we determined that that might not be a good idea.
All right, I think initially I did question it being an open enrollment, which is what you initially shared with us.
Right.
And so after further review, you see that it's.
Right.
And if I may just interject, I talked with a former colleague of mine in Chatham County, Chief Operating Officer Chris Blyce. He and I go back 30 years, and they actually have a virtual academy. They have a cutoff day, and then once they ask their folks to commit, they ask them to commit for the semester, and then they can, people can pick back up and enroll second semester, but it makes a lot of sense there, and we've gotten some materials from them, and I've also reached out to other, I won't spend time describing it all tonight, but I've reached out to other folks that I know across the state and country that are doing some of these things, and we've got a lot of pieces in place, but now it's not perfect, and it's developing.
Right.
because we're trying to pivot on a dime. And I need for the public to understand that we need a little bit of grace because we just can't mash a button and it all be perfect. So it's something we're working on. So Dr. Spencer, I'll let you continue.
I just wanted to add,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think your reason for the rolling was because you wanted to allow room if a student were to become ill and had to be placed in online
Absolutely.
learning.
And that is true. We didn't want to in any way exclude a family or student from an opportunity in the event that there was a condition that they needed to be, yes, because we wanted them to be safe. And so the whole goal is that regardless of masks or no masks and face-to-face or remote, we really want to make sure that the students are learning in a safe environment. So with that being said, in the past 2 weeks, so this is day 9, day 10 is tomorrow, the numbers have increased. And so our hard stop was going to be tomorrow. We now have 95 students that are virtual. So there are 37 at the elementary level, 20 at the middle, and 37 at the high school.
You have the number for the high school again, please?
Sorry, 37.
37.
Yes,
okay.
I failed to say, when I talked with Mr. Blyce, they changed their hard date 3 times because of the situations that Dr. Spencer just realized. So I think we're pretty congruent. I just didn't want there to be any confusion.
And so to speak to what has happened during that time for instruction. So when we came to the board, we did say that we would need 3 positions for elementary. We wanted to blend because we didn't really have enough. We have 12 at K1. We have 16 at 2-3, and then we have 9 for a 4-5 class. And so that didn't really leave a lot of room to be able to pull from different classes, if you will, to be able to do that. And one of the things that the teachers were concerned about was doing dual modalities at the same time, right? So where you're trying to attend to students on a screen at the same time that you're trying to teach students face to face. And so in looking at that, we realized with that small number, we would need just 3 teachers. And so during that time, we have also hired some of our very own teachers to work extended over their planning period, if you will. So they have agreed to work with the students that are virtual. At the secondary level, that's really great. And in the board approved documents that you all saw and have been posted, Edgenuity is a state approved courseware. It has videos, it has guided notes, there are lessons, the videos can be rewound. But in addition to that, we have teachers that have committed to meeting with those students as well. So I'll give an example. At the middle school, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they have specified times to take their online classes. But then they also have meeting times. And
Excuse me,
so,
Doctor, do you mind re-saying that?
Sure. So they have meeting times, okay? So they have specified times that they go in and they do their virtual learning. And then they have meeting times, for example, on Monday from 8:30 to 9:15. They have one from 2 to 3, and they have one from 1:15 to 2. So they have the opportunity to meet with those teachers. Additionally, on Tuesday, they meet from 1 to 1:30 and then by request, so there's office hours. Wednesday, same times. Thursday, they have an additional time from 4 to 5. And then on Friday, they have the same times as Monday. So every single day, the students are meeting with a teacher. And in this case, 2, oftentimes 3. And that's in addition to the Edgenuity courseware. It is during the regular school day. So the teachers are not asked, with the exception of the one from 4 to 5, for the students to meet outside of that time. At the high school level, it's a little bit different. They don't have as many meetings, but they do have the Zoom meetings. And they do have hours where they can meet from 9:35 to 11. The teachers are available. And That's one teacher. And then another teacher is available from 12:30 to 1:45. And then additionally, they have a communication system set up so that in the event that the student needs something, they have the opportunity to be able to message the teacher and the teacher does get back to them. They have had numerous group meetings as well. With that being said, one of the things that you all had asked about was attendance. And so at that secondary level at the high school, with the 37 students, we've really only had 5 that have not attended regularly. And so messages are going to go home to those parents, just to remind them that while virtual is an option, we want to make sure that the students are learning. So last year, it was noted that attendance was a struggle for everyone. And when we know better, we do better. So we want to make sure that the students are contacted regularly. The teachers were doing that last year, but you all voted that in the event that they don't, that they do come back in person because we want to ensure that they are learning. At the elementary level, while we are waiting for the teachers to be hired, the students were met with some course instruction. And so what did that look like? Principals were asked to have their teachers create some packets. Those packets went home. But additionally, the parents on Saturday before school started, they all received an email from the Office of Curriculum and Instruction explaining the way virtual would look, the fact that we were going to be looking for teachers and that we hope to solidify those teachers by Labor Day. And so we might be a little behind in that timeline. However, we also did lessons. And so for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they had lessons in all of the core areas. And the students were then asked to submit those assignments to the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, and they have been given feedback on all of that as well. Additionally, phone calls were made to the parents. In the event we could not reach out and get them on the phone, that a message was left. And so contact was made via email, phone conversations, lessons to the students. And so communication has gone out to the elementary in that. So those are the elementary right now that has happened, the middle school and the high school.
And if you choose to, I want to get this in, I do think it's a moral imperative. I don't think I have to do a lot of convincing to the board to do this, but I do think it's our moral imperative to do this. I mean, I've talked to a lot of parents in 2 states recently, and there are parents that have all kinds of issues that they may not necessarily be able to secure medical documentation for, but nonetheless, it doesn't make the issues any less valid. I do believe that people can go to school safely in person if they practice good hand washing, mask wearing, distancing to the very best that you can. And we're trying to meet the needs of everybody, which is hard to do. But our administration is committed to doing that. And I want to, again, commend our administration and our principals in particular, because they're on the front lines, and teachers that are delivering this instruction. And it is new. And with new is messy. New is messy, but it's the right thing to do, in my opinion. And to Dr. Williams' point last night, who's to say that later down the road, just like the old-fashioned college classes we used to sign up for, we could have a section of junior English at 2 nights a week from 6 to 8:30, and if there's enough sign up and the course makes, we teach it that time. If it doesn't make, then we close the section. That's what we did in college for years, and I think that in talking with Barnett Berry from the University of South Carolina, who also has ties to Stanford, and we're working on together a project called the Whole Child Community School Model. Educators, we have to unlearn more than we have to learn. So we're all used to school starting in September and ending in June, and we all know that the agri-calendar has sort of been obsolete for years, but we still do it. We still go to school 180 days a year, and But the truth of the matter is, content is ubiquitous. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on an internet-connected device. Our iPhones, our smartphones hold more data than the Library of Congress. And right now, the human race, 80% of internet use is still social. So we have to learn as a society to use our technology better. And we're learning more every day. We're getting better at it every day. So I'll get off my soapbox, but I just want to encourage the board to allow us this flexibility for our parents who have requested it and our families who have requested it.
So what we plan to do moving forward is, as Dr. Ingram said, Amber has worked on a survey that we would like to be able to give out to the parents to see who would like to request virtual. We need a hard cutoff for that and a little bit of grace, because depending on the number of parents that request it will determine the next steps as to how that will look. We have enough people now that I believe that we can hire. You gave us permission to do that. And so we can, put that out there and see if there's, as Dr. Ingram said, some teachers out there waiting to teach virtual. But we won't know what that looks like until we know the numbers. The hard stop for that would be next Friday, because the students need to be learning. And what we also want to keep in mind is, and I always try to remember, that I started out as a teacher first. And so what we don't want to do is create a lot of stress on our teachers. And so having something that goes out and lingers and a revolving door, and we do want to accommodate parents and students, but we also want to make sure that our teachers are well and that we have taken into account their needs too, and meeting the needs of the students. And that takes time. Good educators build relationships with their students. They do diagnostic assessments to see where they are. And they do their instruction to ensure that what the students are getting is met. It is met with the right type of instruction so that they can be whatever it is that they want to do. But in order to do that, we need a little bit of grace so that we can get that set up. So what that will look like, we're not entirely sure. And I can say it will depend. If we have the low numbers that we did like this, then we might have a combination class of a K-1 in a school. We might hire that teacher outside so that the teachers won't have to worry about teaching, or switching students in their class, because they've already built some and established those relationships. But again, I have to say it depends. It depends on those numbers.
Dr. Spencer, would you speak to the need, because I understand the parent's dilemma, as do you. What's the interim plan while we're waiting to get this set up? So how are we going to serve the kids that to virtual, but we still need time to get it set up?
So the teachers at the very beginning of the year during the teacher work days were asked to have Canvas. Not everybody loves Canvas, but it is our district learning management system. And what we asked the teachers to do was to please put assignments and things in Canvas and ensure that everybody knew how to use that. And I prefaced it with, I don't have a crystal ball to be able to look into the future and say that where COVID's going to go. Who would have ever thought that this year we'd have more COVID cases than we did last year? So you can't predict. And so I said, we need to make sure that at least we have that in place so students would be able to get assignments. The other thing that we can do is have those meeting links in place, or we have the opportunity to be able to record. So there's lots of things that if a teacher would feel stressed with trying to attend to two at the same time, that perhaps they could do a lesson that is recorded, not with the students, because we don't want to in any way have that out there for everyone, but maybe just opening up your laptop, pressing record as you teach your whole group. It wouldn't be a high quality, But if you look at how this camera is that far away and you look at how much you can see on the screen right over there, it would be better to have that a little bit up close, right? Until we can get some technology in place that would make it more conducive for that. And that's coming. But what we can do is have them record that and they can post that on Canvas as well. So the students would be able to rewind it if need be. So there's other options. If a teacher feels comfortable, they can push a live link. So there are options to that. So we would make sure that the students would be getting what it is that they need. And again, we need to communicate that to our teachers too, so that they're not stressed. We also have a professional development plan that was put in place to help with blended learning. And so Ms. Godfrey and myself created a survey and we pushed that out last week because you need to make sure you get the voices of the teachers. And so we wanted to know, what is it that you need? What is it that you need to help with blended learning? And so we're looking at that as well. And we asked, what is the best way to be able to provide that professional development? Last year, for a time, we didn't have a choice. It was all virtual. So if you didn't know how to navigate and toggle between two screens and you're trying to show somebody how to do something when you're online, that's very difficult to do. But we've grown from that experience and all of the teachers now have a good base. But what we want to do is make sure that now we can focus on, and what does good instruction look like? And so we have a layered approach. We have a district coach that used to work for ECPPS and was trained to teach online. He is developing 5 one-hour recorded sessions for teachers, and we're going to put that in Canvas so that the teachers would have an opportunity to do self-paced. Because a lot of our teachers in the survey said they wanted to have self-paced learning opportunities. Additionally, we are in conversation with Low Country Virtual, and they are having a meeting with us at the, I believe it's September 14th, with some of our teachers and some of their teachers. And so we can have conversations between the two to kind of see, you know, what is it that works? What is it that doesn't work? How can we provide support, you know, and how can they help us? Additionally, we have asked in the survey for the identified teachers, like teachers self-identify. If you have a task or something that you've done instructionally that works very well, how is it that you would like to be able to share this? And we want to start capitalizing on the strengths in our district. We have some talented folks, people, and we need to be able to make sure that they have the ability and the opportunity to be able to share those skills. And so we want to be able to provide opportunities for them to teach others. And so we can do that in a face-to-face model at the last week of the month and just have an opportunity, or we can have them create a self-pace, which is what some of the other teachers ask for, or they could do it in a virtual meeting, which was another way the teachers wanted. Additionally, Amber and I are working on a course that will help teachers understand the difference. And so using that technology a little bit differently with SAMR. And so we've talked about, what does that mean? Do we use technology just to substitute things? Or are we really augmenting, modifying, and redefining how we use technology in instruction? But providing it in a self-paced module that, again, they can take on Canvas, so they're not feeling that required, you know, time that they have to give. And then we also have been given the opportunity to name some ambassadors from our district and have them go into North Carolina Rethink Education, where they will be trained in 40 hours of blended learning as facilitators, and then they would be able to turn around and provide training for our teachers. So there's these different ways that we will be able to do it and do it along the way so that it's not overwhelming, but it is providing an opportunity for them to learn a little bit more.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Spencer? I'm sorry, Ms. Ward Nelson. I took your job.
That's fine.
Maybe I'm missing something here, but the teachers are being told already, be prepared because you're going to be doing virtual class and you're going to be in the classroom, or what?
No. So at the very beginning of the school year, when we all met and We had a meeting with all of the teachers. What I told them is that they needed to be prepared. It's better to have it and have the understanding, like put everything in Canvas. If you put it in Canvas, you might not need it. You might use it differently, but in the event we went virtually, it would be there. It's better to need it. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And one of the things that the parents really said, and we did give surveys, and believe it or not, folks, we did look at the surveys. And one of the things that the parents really appreciated was one learning management system.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Okay. One learning management system. So for instance, somebody might use Google Classroom, somebody else might use Canvas, somebody else might use Seesaw. If you use a lot of different, and say you have 3 kids at your home, and they're all using different platforms, it was confusing for parents. And so when you know better, you do better. And we asked parents, what is it that you want? They said one, just pick one. We did pick Canvas. The majority of teachers love it. It's not as user-friendly for K2. So we did say that in the event that they wanted to use Seesaw, which is another way for them to be able to, upload information for the teachers, that they would be able to have that opportunity. And that again, too, was in your board-approved materials. But we just wanted to make sure, one, that we didn't throw technology out the window thinking that, COVID is over, now we don't need technology. But 2, being prepared in the event that something would happen, we would be prepared.
So in other words, you just want to make sure when they went totally virtual, they were prepared.
Right.
But it's not hybrid what you're talking about. It's just
Well, and that's,
some are face to face and these other ones have volunteered to do virtual.
what we would like to do, and I don't know, and like I said, it depends on the numbers. What I would like to do is not have the teachers do dual modalities. I've said that numerous times, because it is difficult. Not everybody, can do that. I told them my struggle. You can, let me rephrase, you can do it, but it takes some design in the scheduling and all of that. So what I am saying is that it would be better to have somebody devoted to virtual and somebody devoted to face-to-face. That would be the ideal situation.
So you're saying there is a chance that they may have to do like a hybrid. They may have to do virtual and face to face.
In the event that that would happen, I would like to be able to ask if somebody felt comfortable doing that, because it can be done. If somebody feels comfortable doing it and they were good at it, yes, but I would prefer that it would be separate. I just think that works better. That might look like maybe just looking and reimagining a schedule differently.
So I want us to be clear on, we had that discussion and we voted against teachers doing both. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that, that the board made a decision that teachers would not be asked
Right.
to teach virtually
Okay.
and in the classroom.
Yeah,
Okay.
we did make that decision.
Okay.
We did say that we would approve an application process
For the,
for teachers who feel comfortable doing it. They
Right.
would apply for that opportunity to
And
teach
give us that.
virtually. But we would rather not have teachers put in a position where they would be teaching in a hybrid situation.
And it was based on feedback from teachers.
yes.
Right.
That's, and I know I have said that numerous times. I said with my own granddaughter, and I use that as an example, she should have listened to me, and she's right across from a screen and I'm attending to the screen and she was all over the place. And that's my granddaughter. And I said, I don't want to ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do myself.
Well, I just want to make sure that we could do that as a last resort.
Yes.
I mean, a last resort.
Yes.
And-
And
and
then that would be
Put teachers
application,
under that pressure.
right?
And that's the whole purpose of approving the hire of 25 additional positions. Those 25 additional positions would be the virtual instructors. So Just wanted to make that clear.
Thank
I do. Thank you so much, Dr. Spencer, for all that detailed information. It was really good and helpful. But one question I have a couple. First question is, I thought after explaining all that, what does a typical day look like for a virtual student? Are they doing the full schedule? Are they doing the full schedule in front of a teacher? Are they doing part in front of a teacher? Are they doing some of their work? What does a day look like for a virtual student?
So it would look differently at different grade levels.
Okay.
What we would like to do is not have them attached to their screen for the entire day. And so when we were looking at people for the virtual option for those students who did have that medical documentation, I'll give you an example of like a second and third grade. They might have a whole group for 20 minutes where they have a morning meeting, they talk, everybody's there. The difference between this year and last year is we're going to take attendance for all of the meetings that they need to have. So students don't just show up in the morning and say, I'm here, and then they don't show up in the afternoon. And that's to also take into account our elective teachers, our art, music, and PE, because in the afternoons, a lot of our students weren't showing up. But what does that mean? So they would show up and they do their morning meeting, and then they'd be given a task to do. It could be, for instance, maybe they had math instruction in the morning. And then maybe they're talking about geometric shapes, and it's like saying, okay, take time off the screen. They have textbooks that they would be working in as well. So there's things that they would do that would be, as they say, asynchronous, which just means not in front of that computer and at the same time live. And so they would have the opportunity to do that. They'd have movement breaks. They'd be able to do their snack. They would have all of their core classes, but they would have it in chunks. And typically our teachers do that anyway. So they don't do the lecture so much anymore. Like I'm lecturing to all of you. That's a sit and get, which is helpful because you're getting information. But what does that mean? If the whole class was nothing but a teacher talking at you, you're only getting information. But now the students would have that opportunity to then be able to take that information and do something with it, but then reconnect back with the teachers. And so they might do that in a small group setting. The teachers, just like in face-to-face, would look at the data and the information that they had, the work that the students completed and submitted, and be able to say, okay, these students need to meet with me at this time. And so it's just that communication loop, right, to the parents. This is the time that we would have our small groups. This is the time you would log on. They would have the assignments and everything would be there. So you would have your core classes, and then, you would have your break for lunch. You wouldn't have to have that on the screen, just like you wouldn't have to have the break or whatever. And then we also have, your electives so that you would be able to have those as well, because we want, as Dr. Ingram said, it's about the holistic child. It's about everything. Our students need to have the opportunity to be able to have art. They need to have the opportunity to have PE and music. And so what that looks like, I can't guarantee, is it in the morning or in the afternoon? It will depend on the school. It will depend on the numbers, and it will depend on the grades. What I can tell you, and I'm sorry about the air conditioning, what I can tell you is this: at the secondary level, it becomes a little bit different, and there might be some classes that won't be offered or can't be offered during the virtual, just based off of the nature of the class. And so that is also something that parents do need to consider. So if you have this 4-year plan and you're looking at graduation and some of those classes that you would want to take, they might not be conducive to a virtual environment and being able to do those things there, if that makes sense. So I hate to say it depends, but it does kind of depend.
Okay.
But may I just clarify that question? But each day, each parent would know what their child's schedule is for that day.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And what I'd like to do, and this is just me, everybody's already used to a schedule. I don't see any reason to change that per se as far as times. So that, if the students are face-to-face and you also have the teacher, I would just think everybody's kind of used to that by now. But what that would look like, again, would be up to the schools.
Okay. All right, so my next concern is, you said the cutoff date will be by next Friday. If we decide to do this, our cutoff date for registration will be next Friday. So when we started the school year, we said we're going to do a remote option for people who have medical issues. And the plan was have teachers set up for that. But it looks like we didn't have the teachers set up for that, to do that like we really wanted to. What are we going to do
If we don't have the teacher.
if we don't have enough teachers? Like, what's our plan? Because here it is, I see us reacting instead of being proactive on a lot of things. So what are we going to do if we don't have enough teachers in place? Because we've made it very clear that we didn't want to force our teachers.
Right.
So yeah, what are we going to do if we don't have enough? I pray we do have enough teachers or facilitators or whatever we're using. But what are we going to do?
I truly believe, and I could be wrong, but I think that if they are not asked to do both, I think there are some teachers that would really, as Dr. Ingram said, I think they would like to teach virtually. And I think there are some teachers that really would like to teach face-to-face. We can give a survey out to teachers simultaneously, so we would kind of know that information at the same time, which makes the planning part easier. But you're right, you don't know until you have the numbers. We could have a smaller window for parents, but that would be at the pleasure of the board. We just felt a week would be enough time for a parent to sign up, but we do have to have that time to be able to adjust, if you will. And it could be that, and we had talked about this earlier before we ever said the medical documentation, and this isn't in stone, it's just ideas. So whenever you're faced with challenges, sometimes you have to innovate and you have to rethink what it could look like. And you can't be boxed in by the parameters of what used to be. And I think we learned that from the pandemic, because we tried to take a traditional model of schooling and just modify it and put it on, or substitute the screen, but still try to do the same thing. And what we found is that's difficult. So I'm saying all of that to say, what if we had enough for a class? And what if that meant that maybe a fourth grade class would have a teacher, say from Central Elementary School, that really wanted to do virtual, but the students came from Pasquotank, P.W. Moore, Sheep Harney, and they would be in that virtual class, right? That teacher, and there's back end things that you have to do in Power School and all those things that align with the state that nobody here needs to probably know or understand. But the reality would be there would be that virtual teacher and the students would have the virtual experience. And I think we think that school is a building. School is the people. It's the teacher and the students. So when you think about that virtual piece, they're not, yes, they might be a student that would have attended Sheep Harney Elementary School, but their teacher could be the one from Central that opted to do that virtual, if that makes sense. Okay, so, and I'll give another example. The middle school currently, right now, the teachers that are working with those students, most of them are from Elizabeth City Middle School because they wanted that opportunity. So we have a social studies teacher, a math teacher, an ELA teacher, and what did I forget? Science. Those are all at ECMS, but the River Road students are taking classes in Edgenuity, but the teacher that's working with them every day are from ECMS. They're still a River Road student, but they're working with those teachers because that's what those teachers wanted to do.
And I just to clarify, we wouldn't put children in a virtual setting until we had enough teachers to cover those classes.
Correct.
Prior to that time, they would stay where they are now. Okay.
Now, I have a question with regard to that and kind of what Mr. Spence was saying as well. So as we try to manage our students and our parents' expectations, if the deadline for the survey that's going to come out is 9/10, so that'll be next Friday, what would be the expectation of notifying the students that they've been accepted into the virtual program, as well as trying to find out, do we have the teachers as well that have been onboarded to begin teaching virtually? So what would be, I guess, the time frame or the timeline for survey, decision, implementation, and begin? Because I know it's a fluid situation. That may not be something we can have the answers for tonight, but it's something that I think we should be thinking about as we're going forward so that everyone can be, I guess, aware of what to expect going forward. So if we do the survey today, goes out Friday, you give them an answer. We find out how many students we have. When does those students get notified that they will then start in a virtual setting? Because they will still be in regular classroom until that point. The teachers, we find out that we got the 25 teachers, the onboarding process, getting them hired, processed, and ready to start hitting the ground running. How does that time frame look? So the parents who are listening, students who are thinking about this option, they can kind of have an idea of what to expect going forward.
So what I can tell you is that with the approval of the positions, we can now post for the positions, which means that teachers that are out there can go ahead and start applying for the positions. And then we could interview and already kind of have like this pool, if you will, to be able to base it off of those numbers, right? In addition to that, we can pool the teachers, and that's a simple day turnaround to see who's interested and who would not be, right? And then it would be a matter of looking at those students and seeing who is applying, who isn't applying. And so you kind of, what I have found in my experience with surveys that we have sent out, that really, as soon as you send it out, that's typically the first 2 days is typically when you're getting a lot of the information. And then as the word gets out, there's others that come in. So you would kind of be able to base some of those decisions almost immediately when you're starting to look at that for the planning purposes of it. So while it is open, we could still be planning and looking at those numbers and kind of looking at that.
And under no circumstances will teachers who are applying for virtual cause vacancies in classrooms where students are participating face to face.
You may need to clarify that question.
Okay, I'm saying if a teacher is already working in a classroom face to face,
Right.
they will know that the virtual positions are not open to them. That's just for people who are not working. In other words, we're not going to create vacancies in our classrooms that are operating face to face by hiring those teachers for virtual classrooms.
Oh, I see what you're asking.
You understand?
Yes, I do. And that's a very
Does
good
that make
question.
sense?
Yeah, it does. It's a very good question.
There's a potential for
Very good.
Yeah, because I understand what you're asking.
And if I'm already teaching first grade
Right.
at Sheep Harney Elementary.
But now I
School.
want to be virtual.
Right, exactly.
Well, you're already our employee. So here, I think here's what I would answer to that. And this isn't in stone either, but I'm just thinking out loud as you ask that question because it's a good one. When you look at, we have these positions and we're advertising. What if there aren't 25 teachers that are out there, right? And they want to, they're already our employee. And if they're interested in doing that virtual, and like I said, if we had the numbers, they might be that teacher that would teach for virtual in our system. Does that make sense?
I think so, as long as it's.
Here's what,
Yeah, it wouldn't create a vacancy. They're already here. And so they would be doing something that they wanted to do, right? And serving the students that would be virtual. If that makes sense.
So I think she's saying.
Yeah, I think what she's, and I may not, correct me if I'm wrong,
Right.
Ms. Houston, but I think what she's saying is, say I'm teaching a class
Right,
of fifth graders. And this option comes up to teach virtual. And I say, hey, I know that stuff. I know how to do it. That's what I would like to do.
right.
And so I apply to teach virtually, although I already have a class face to face.
And now I've left a vacancy. I understand what you're saying.
That's okay.
Exactly.
What's going to happen with those kids that I'm teaching face to face,
Right,
if I'm then accepted to teach virtually.
Right.
I think that's exactly.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at HR because no.
Would you pull them out the classroom? And I guess that's the question.
That's what her question
Pull
is.
them out of the classroom if they did apply and
Now I have a classroom with no teacher.
Well, if I could offer this, because this, now, you don't really know if this would work, but this is kind of how it works before COVID. I'll use my own experiences as a student here in Elizabeth City, Pasquotank, and also my youngest daughter's experience when she was in kindergarten, but she's 26 years old, so that's a little while ago. The enrollment in elementary sometimes will go up. She had a teacher.
I was the add-on teacher at Sheep Farm.
So you know how that works. Exactly. So the kids may have to be redistributed. So let's say that, Ms. Warden and Dr. Williams and Mr. Archuleta and Ms. Houston are teaching fifth grade. And the role of, and we have the option out there, and then we've got students that want to be virtual. Well, that will deplete your numbers in the face-to-face. Now, I'm keeping it in one school because I'm simplifying it because it was probably going to be more complex than that because it would go across schools. But then Ms. Warden could become that virtual teacher. But she's reducing your class size because some of your kids are coming out of your rooms to be virtual. And then the kids that still want to be face-to-face that were in Ms. Warden's room would be redistributed to you. Now, that happens anyway. You know, when new kids come into schools, they move in, they move out. Our country is a lot more transient than it used to be. I didn't realize that until I did like a survey in a large school district last year. We did it. And did you know that only 20% or so of the graduating seniors had been in that same school district the entire year? There were 12, K through 12. So that's kind of a phenomenon now. But that's why we try to keep the standard course of study so that we try to keep people at the same place whenever they have to move in and out of teachers and things like that. But that's one way it could work. But Ms. James Davis is right too. We could not keep somebody from applying for that. So we'd have to consider it if someone really wanted to come out and do that. But we have those situations anyway. We'll have teachers that apply for administrative jobs. And then typically we won't pull them out of their classroom until we can replace them. But we don't want to keep them from advancing if that's what they want to do. So we have to allow the application. So that's one way.
And will it be up to the principal at each school in conjunction with you all to decide, say if there are multiple people who apply, but we don't need it within their school to teach virtually, we don't need that many. They decide who, will it be up to the principal? Will that be up to you guys to decide who?
I'd like to defer to Ms. James Davis on that. I hate to put you on the spot, but that's more of an HR issue.
If let's say we're in this building, central, and have multiple teachers who want to teach virtual, will it be up to the principal to decide who is teaching virtual and who is staying face-to-face? Will it be the same model that they about students?
It's not a separate school.
Okay. And can you clarify for me, are we still held to class size mandates regardless of whether we're face-to-face or virtual?
Yes. For the elementary, you have, your kindergarten class size is 18.
Your first grade is 16 and
So
then
we are
second and
still
third is
close to that
17.
regardless
Yes.
of whether we're face-to-face
Right.
or virtual.
Yes.
So a
Which-
virtual kindergarten teacher who decides to go virtual can't have more than that number.
That's right.
Okay.
Because
And there
they're
are
lost.
no waivers out there that would let you go with, say,
Not that we know of, no.
+5 or whatever.
Oh, for the well, we can submit some.
That begets a question that I have, and I haven't been in North Carolina for 8 years, so forgive me. It used to be that the class size was the average district-wide, so you may have a hotspot where you've got one class of 22, but if your district average and that grade level was still within the parameters, I know I'm not dreaming, that used to be.
Yeah, and then there's something with the school as well.
Is that correct? I am right? Okay. I like being right.
It was an average, yeah.
What is the selection process for the students to go virtual? Is it unlimited amount of students who want to go virtual?
Well, the legislation reads that the districts or units, that's us, are authorized to provide virtual instruction during the 21-22 school year to a student with the consent that the parents, that the student's parent or legal guardian with the consent. So the way I read it, I'm not a lawyer, but the way I read it, it would be if the parent wants it, then we are authorized to try to accommodate. It doesn't say we have to, but it says we're authorized to. Thank you. Should have done law school.
That just pushes me back to my original question about the concern of having enough staff and what we're going to do. So that's why I keep bringing it up, because I still want our students to get the proper instruction.
I do too.
Look at ingenuity, that's cool for some, but for some, that's not good still because of the structure of the learning of the student. So, okay.
If a student, so we're saying at the current recommendation that the parent would have to fill out the survey by next Friday to indicate that they would like the option of virtual. Will that be, so that's the cutoff. Will that be a semester commitment? Will that be
It would,
first
it
9
would need
weeks?
to
Will that be
it would need to be a commitment for the semester.
semester?
That would be our next question.
Right.
Is how long will they be expected to be?
It would have to, it would have to be a semester commitment. Now, I don't speak in absolutes, because if there's somebody that was just, the parent wanted them in virtual and then they were struggling tremendously, it goes to what Mr. Spence was saying. We want to make sure that they're getting a good instruction. So you wouldn't want to keep them there struggling the entire time when, in essence, they would have done better face-to-face. But we also, for the teacher's perspective, you don't want to have students going back and forth and back and forth. That's not good either.
And can we use the North Carolina Virtual Public School?
I can't hear you.
Can we use the North Carolina Virtual Public School to fill in some of the gaps with certain students? We don't, let's say we only have this a handful of this grade level. Can we use the North Carolina Virtual Public School can we do that?
Can, but the enrollment times, we would have to be mindful of the enrollment time. So like for the fall, we would need to look and see when that cutoff date was. But then for the next semester, that would not be a problem. And we also have, with Edgenuity, there's also one that has in instructor support.
A little bit louder, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Edgenuity also has a component that has instructor support as well. And so we have purchased some of those renewable courses or just some of those courses that, you know, we have some students that maybe were in a foreign language and maybe we don't have somebody that could do that. That would be a potential option. Limited, if you will, but not every student is going to apply for virtual. So it would depend. The answer goes back to it would depend.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just received this notification. The State Department has just put out that we are going to be receiving additional guidance from the State Department regarding the new legislation really soon. So that might provide some of the clarity and answer some of the questions that we're talking about, because it is a ship that we're sailing and building at the same time, and it's difficult. But
I think what Dr. Ingram wanted to do was be a little bit proactive as far as having that option available more, sooner as opposed to later, because when you look at the COVID numbers and there is some anxiety with parents and children, it goes back to we want our students to learn and we want them to be safe. And we want the families to believe and know that their children are safe and learning.
I think we kind of all have a
A little
concern.
bit louder, Dr. Williams. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I think we all kind of have the concern now about teachers who may choose virtual and having a classroom of students that their parents want them in class. So that's a concern. I know you all would be working on that and just finding reviewing that and discussing how you're going to meet that need. But I think then it goes back to the conversation that I did have about operating outside the normal classroom hours. And teachers who may want to do that with additional compensation, that they're teaching during the day, but they may teach classes in the afternoon for students, and parents who would be interested in that. I think that would help possibly to curtail this problem of if we don't have enough teachers, we may have teachers interested in, and I mentioned that. We realize because of teacher pay, we have some teachers who work part-time jobs. This could be something for teachers after school if they choose to do that. But it may be something that we want to think about sooner rather than later, that may possibly assist us. Because it seems that, it's a lot of uncertainty right now. We put this out for parents making a decision that, yes, I'd like my child to be virtual. And now it becomes the when or the if. So when will it happen? We're waiting for teachers, and if it will happen, if we'll have enough. And then as you're moving into the semester, when do you want to, the end point to, okay, we're not going to be able to fulfill this. And so if we're sharing this and as we vote on it, we want to make sure, and I know you're working on a plan and I know it's a process, but it is just something that I know we're all thinking about right now.
And that's a great suggestion, and also something that we can include in the survey to the teachers, right? So are you interested in doing that extra time, and would you be willing to do after hours? Because, in our planning purposes, that turnaround can be very quick. So we would know immediately who would be interested in doing that.
And to see if parents would be interested.
right.
Yes,
because-
and parents as well. And that can be added to the survey.
I think this will be thinking a little further out. But when you said, Dr. Spencer, about they will remain in this setting for the semester. As I look at like the next semester, and let's say that the numbers start to trend downward, but these students have signed up for second semester as virtual as well. I would hope that there would be an opportunity after we view the information data that there could be an exception made to those students, because this is an option they're choosing right now based on the information that's coming out about the COVID as it stands today. As those numbers eventually we hope will go down as that starts to happen, I would hope that we would also allow those students who did say, yes, I still want a remote option in January because the numbers are still high. But if it changes by February, March, I want to be back in school, that we would look at it that way instead of like they're going back and forth in and out of school. I'm just thinking that they're taking this option because of what their numbers are now. But as those numbers start to trend down, well, what are we going to look like at that point? Will those students still want to be doing virtual, or would they want to be back to school? They're leaving school now to go virtual because of the numbers. The numbers go down, I want to be back in school. How are we going to approach that situation?
Well, as long as you had the time frame per semester and we looked at it after each time frame, we can let them back in, right? We can let them back face to face after a certain block. Right or wrong? I mean, I'm asking.
Well, and that's a very good question, because then that goes back to the planning piece of it, and knowing how many of the parents still want their students to be virtual and how many of them would want to be face to face. And if the teachers were hired to do virtual, and then you have this mass exodus of students that would be going back face to face, then you have a different conundrum, if you will. I do know the legislation says that we can offer that virtual instruction through June of 2022. So I do know that that can be that option, but it's just for that planning purpose, that could be something else to consider.
Well, I think that when we're talking about virtual teachers, though, we still have up to 95 who have medical documentation that they need to be virtual. Wasn't that the number, 95? So while those teachers, if students did decide to go back face to face, this is basically saying for the school year, there's 95, because COVID's not going to disappear overnight.
Correct.
So these people would still need instructors, and we would use those. We would hire separate the new positions that we approved last night. Those teachers would still be teaching those 95 students.
Okay.
And I think my last question, in which I think you somewhat addressed this, because of concerns previously, you will have monitoring guidelines established, or interventions for these students to make sure they're successful. This is something that you will already have in place.
We have, so the small groups and those instructional times. So instead of just, like I said, having just this one large group meeting and then that's it. And teachers did do that once everything kind of settled down. I know that teachers had those small groups and then they met with students individually. So it did become, it was a process. And as we I guess, went through the journey, if you will, of COVID, I think that everybody kind of got into that groove. It's not like March of 2020, where it just was like in 2 days, we went from a classroom to, technology, and everybody was trying to do it and figure out how you can make it work. And so we've learned a lot from that. But yes, that's why there's that professional development. That's why we wanted to ensure that they had the opportunity to be able to fill out the survey that Ms. Godfrey and I put out there for them. What is it that you need? But then we also have the coaches, the instructional coaches, who I have to give some credit to right now, because they have filled in classes and done a lot. And they're helpful because we have meetings with them and they meet with teachers. And so if there is something that they're seeing in their schools and there's a need, they bring that back to our PLCs, and then they talk to us, and then we can better design and, support and help for them. So there's that layered effect. And so we've really worked hard to get that in place as well. So we want to make sure that the teachers are getting what they need and that they feel supported.
Thank you.
One other thing we did for principals, and I'm pleased to announce we're the first school district in the state to do this. We joined edleader21.org or Battelle for Kids, which is a national network. So our principals, especially all of our principals, it doesn't have to be just the new principals, but they'll be able to network and talk with principals from all over the country virtually and share ideas and get thinking about how they improve their schools and their instructional programs moving forward. And that's pretty groundbreaking, quite frankly. And I don't want to let out any more because that's going to be a really good story later down the road. But I think that's really important too, because the school will take on the personality of the principal. You know, and we want our principals to be very, very strong and supportive of our teachers. And to Mr. Walton's point, when you asked the question, sir, last year's experience of mine, we had a kid, we had the rule, you're not supposed to be a semester at a time. And he came to me, he actually drove 15, 16 miles to the district because it was a large district. And he wanted to look me in the eye and he said, how can I tell a kid he can't come to school? He's been out all year, he signed up for virtual, he wants to come back. How can I tell him he can't come to school? So I think for the most, but then we had a kid last April when I was visiting, while I was officially a part of us, and he was telling us on the screen that virtual really worked well for him because it just worked well for him. He talked about how he thrived in that environment. So I think that we're doing all that we can to really provide what everybody needs. And it's truly about personalized learning. What's best for the individual child, not what's going to make our number look better on some accountability system. So that's what we're aiming for. And we don't have all the answers, but we're discovering some of the answers even in this discussion. So I appreciate all of your thoughtful questions and input.
And I think I'd like to know or have a better understanding of how many of our teachers would be willing to teach virtually and to just be virtual only. And I think that's a key component. Yes, we can ask parents all day long if they want that option, but we have to know that we can provide the instruction without going into the situation that we are saying we don't want to do, and that's have teachers teaching face-to-face and virtual at the same exact time. We could get that information as soon as possible to help us understand, because, you know, obviously, you know, we don't want to overburden our teachers. We don't want to put them in the situation, because it was loud and clear that that was not a good situation for the majority of teachers. So, you know, if we could get that information, that would be very helpful. And I think that, you know, for me, the only way that I'm in, you know, I approve of it, of you know, expanding the virtual instruction, is to know that we have the instructors to do it. I mean, that's how I feel. We can't offer something that we don't know that we can provide.
I agree.
And I'm willing to make a motion with that stipulation. That's acceptable.
Pam, Buckler, before you make the motion, I was going to take us down another rabbit hole. If that's okay. But I don't want to keep anybody longer. But I wanted to just, as we're focusing on virtual learning, I still think the issues that, are why we're here are because what's going on in the schools. So we know exactly what's going on in the schools as far as, how are these numbers coming up? Or is the sanitation being done class after class like it should be? Do we need to have more time for that? We approved the calendar, I think, back in July, I believe it's a July meeting. Can we be flexible? Again, with the calendar, we need to make sure that we have time to ensure that these things are being done. The buses, we've talked about the bus issue. Those are things that have brought us here. Like we have numbers that are rising because of certain issues. What are those issues? So we may not have addressed those or found out what those are, but as we're trying to keep kids in school, these are the things that I think we should also be working towards as well. Like, yes, the students are very important, but so are the teachers and staff that they are getting the help that they need to make sure that they can keep the room safe, keep the buses safe, cafeterias, making sure the students are doing what they need to do as well. So it's being mindful of going in this option. I understand. But again, as we said, we wanted kids to go back to school at the start of the year. I still don't want to lose focus on keeping schools open. So are we doing everything that we need to do to make sure that these schools stay open? So I just want to make sure we don't lose that focus.
Absolutely. I mean, I've said from the start, and I do believe that the best option, the best instruction is face-to-face. Social interactions. Kids learn, people learn more together in person. We're social creatures. The human race, we're all social creatures. We need that interaction. So no, you're right, Mr. Walton. We don't want to lose the focus on keeping schools open. I know where we've had some, I can't speak for every single school, but the principals I've taught, we've even got principals that are sanitizing themselves. I walked into River Road 5 or 6 days ago. It was lunchtime, and the principal and assistant principal were wiping down the tables with disinfectant after one lunch. So they were pitching in and doing it. And they didn't know I was coming. I just dropped down there, and I caught them doing it. So I like to believe that we are doing everything we can in that perspective. But we will look into that more to be sure that they are. And when we had a quarantine case with a pretty large number from a bus the other day, the principal at a different school told me that she was having the custodians come in on the weekends to do deep cleaning of those classrooms, which was overtime, which of course we pay and we approve. So I do believe that we're being cognizant and conscious of that based on what I know, but we'll look into it further.
Thank you.
On that, do you know exactly what happens after each round of delivery or pickup on the buses? I mean, what they do? Do they sanitize each seat and everything after every run?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. James Davis. They have sprayers that they spray. I can't remember what they're called. Those backpack sprayers. Oh, the spray bottles. Okay, we had backpacks where I was, but they spray after runs.
Now, think about
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't know.
What was that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Drivers are just using the spray
The
bottle.
drivers use the spray bottles. The schools have backpack sprayers.
So I did have one question, but now I have two based on that. So who follows up to make sure that is being done? Because we're sharing a lot of routes now with buses. We'll drop some set of students off, and then because we're so crunched with time and trying to get kids to school, we're not being extra late because they've already been late. But
Well, this responsibility would lie within the department. So it would be the transportations department. Now, Ms. James Davis supervises the transportation director. So was I correct?
And then follow up the training, but also to the maintenance department and to the principal, making sure those things are happening.
Ms. James Davis, I have a question for Dan, before you move on, I just have a question regarding that. So in order, I know you're following up. Do bus drivers have to document that they have sanitized after each? For example, I know in some situations you check temperatures and you have to sign in and date the time, like at a daycare. So when you have bus drivers who are supposed to be saying they do sanitize, not saying that they don't, okay, but do you log that information? Is that information logged? Are they required to do that? Or you're just going by them saying that they're doing it?
Yeah, I can't say that I know of any type of log because they are doing it in between their routes. I will check to see if that's something that that has been required, but I don't believe that there was a log for that.
Okay. I was just curious, are they documented that they have, sanitized between each, signature and a time, just showing that it is being done?
Yeah, I will,
Just to support that it's being done based on what you.
yeah, I will talk with Ms. Shield about that. And that maybe that's something we can implement if we're not.
Did you have another?
I do. So let me preface before I ask this question that I, like most of our board members, feel that our children need to be in school. We want them in school getting face to face. That is, I think the census for most of us here on the
I
board.
think all our teachers believe that too. I've gotten several communications from teachers in the last couple of days indicating that they want their kids face to face.
Absolutely.
Be with them face to face.
Absolutely.
But we also want them to be safe and healthy as well.
Exactly. We also want them to be safe as well. So my question goes back to Dr. Ingram. When we started the conversation, you said about shutting down maybe one bus, one classroom, possibly one school, or whatever the case may be. What would be the challenge right now of giving some assistance to our staff, our teachers, the administration, trying to make this plan? Because as Mr. Walton asked, what is our plan? And I don't think he got a complete answer, but I didn't hear a complete answer when he asked that question about our plan. Would it make sense to do a temporary, I know you said you didn't want to do a hard shutdown, but would it make sense to do like a 2-week shutdown in our district, especially with the holiday coming up, and we know that things outside are going to be a little different? Would it make sense? I'm not saying that we have to do a temporary 2-week or something like that, because that would give, I guess, our administrative time for that Friday of next Friday, after they get the surveys back, to kind of help get a more accurate plan in place. It would help, I think, our principals, our teachers get a plan in place. It will certainly help us sanitize our school in a much better way, especially considering we're short-staffed on our custodians. You mentioned that some of the principals are cleaning tables and things like that. Would it make sense to do something like that just to help us temporarily to help us go forward in a positive way?
Well, I can share an experience, but every community is different. And you got to consider the will of the community, I believe. The district I was proud to serve 4 years last year, the board decided on a 2-week shutdown right after Christmas, because they felt like the holidays, and to be perfectly honest, it was contentious. It was a split vote. It was 5-4. And it was wildly unpopular with the community. That was that community. This community may be very different. I don't know. And then if you make that decision, you would have to consider, well, if we're going to shut down school for 2 weeks, are we going to pause athletics? Are we going to pause? And then you've got and believe me, I'm all about, I used to coach, I get it. I used to play, I understand how important that is. Then you got our folks saying, well, you can't go to school, but you can play football. That kind of thing. So I would just ask you to consider all of those things. Would it give more time? Of course it would give more time. It could also create somewhat another one of those shifts on the teachers. Oh no, I've got to go virtual for 2 weeks all of a sudden right now. So it may not heighten anxiety from that perspective, but I understand the intent is noble and good, but I think you got to always think about the unintended consequences of a decision like that. All I can say is based on my experience in a very different community at a different time of year, it was not received well in that community, and the board took some hits on that. But again, that's a board decision. I'm pleased to implement whatever the board deems fit. There are some area schools that have shut down for a couple of weeks. But I don't think we're at that point. If I did, I'd recommend it. We may be a little closer in one school than others, but my general philosophy is you shut down as little as possible, and it's gradual. And then if you're forced to, you do, because we all think that in-person is pretty important. It's not an exact science. I wish it were, but it's just not. It's a fair question. I mean, your statement's very fair.
Nothing, if I could, how about even if we would consider a half a day a week, like a half a day on Friday of every week? Just a half a day. It would give that extra time to clean. Students will be out of the building and the buses wouldn't be running, so it would give, at least that extra time. The teachers would only have to worry about virtual teaching about, what is it, 3 hours? We shut down a half a day or 4 hours.
I think my original point, and it wasn't about a shutdown. That was not my original point. The thing that I was trying to point out was, as we look at our calendar, like how can we look at the calendar and make certain adjustments? If we have to go to a shutdown, then that would be something down the road. But can we look at the calendar now of the days that we have? And if there's things that need to be done, can we be flexible enough to make those adjustments, to make those changes versus having to shut down for 2 weeks? Because like you said, it's just you don't win either way. But how do we still ensure that the students are being able to go to a safe school and it's being cleaned properly? The buses are the same way, and they're not having any interruption of their other activities. So as we look at the calendar, that's what my question.
Well, actually do. The calendar law, I'd have to go back and research it because as I recall, we would have to submit a calendar by a certain day to the State Department. Is that still in force here? I'm sorry. Right. And what are our parameters on allowing adjustments like Mr. Walton asked? Yeah. I think we still have to have 1,000 hours or 180 days, something like that. I'm sorry? 1,025. Okay, thank you. 184 days. Oh, wow. 1,025 hours. Do we have the flexibility to shift it other than weather delays and things like that?
Into the day.
We could do that. Okay.
And that's all I'm asking. It's just like that's something we could look at if the time should come.
So you're not asking to make that decision right now?
No.
Like looking, we wouldn't do
We
that.
have done that, added hours to the day so that if we needed flexibility with the calendar, we'd have those days built in. Yeah,
We have flex days built in,
right.
yeah.
Right.
But we need to take our community in consideration before we do something that radical. Everybody has their schedule set. So, all of that we just need to consider because you have people who are on their work schedules. They have their kids scheduled to do certain things. Of course, education is the most important thing, but there are other things that we have to consider as well. So that's something we can look at, as you said, but we do have that flexibility. Okay, are there any other questions or comments, discussions at this time?
No,
So,
I think we all agree that, you know, we want face-to-face and want everyone to stay face-to-face.
Exactly.
We started out with virtual only for medical documentation, but our numbers in quarantines have maybe increased faster than we thought. And our parents and, you know, who have expressed, you know, concern about sending their kids to school. I certainly would much rather have a virtual option than a complete shutdown, as you referenced. Given those concerns and trying to do the best that we can to compromise for everyone, because we're often in a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation. I feel like, you know, this is something that, you know, we do need to do for those who want that option. With that being said, I do again say that we need to figure out if we can do this before we do it, or before we say we are going to do it. So with that being said, it's only our role as school board members to now vote on whether we will allow the staff to create that plan, because that's not our job to create the plan. And our vote was only for medical documentation for virtual. So with that being said, I move to accept the superintendent's recommendation to expand our current virtual option as allowed by Senate Bill 654 to allow families to choose virtual instruction.
Okay, my own question is, to your point, we're just voting on giving permission to look into the plan, correct? Or am I?
Well, I said
Well, here's my question is,
to expand.
like you said, we don't know if we're going to have the people. We don't know what that they're going to try.
We don't know until we ask.
That's why I asked.
We have to vote to go beyond medical documentation.
And that I agree. I agree with that we look into that plan.
That's the motion. We're just approving, the motion at this point is to approve the plan.
Okay, that's
Okay.
all I'm asking.
All right, would you restate the motion, please?
Yes. I moved to accept the superintendent's recommendation to expand our current virtual option as allowed by the Senate Bill 654 to allow families to choose virtual instruction.
And I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the virtual plan based on House Bill 654, the expansion of the virtual plan. The motion was offered by Ms. Pam Pereza. It's been seconded by Mr. Archuleta. Is there any other discussion at this point? If not, I'd like to call for a vote. Okay, Ms. Sawyer, roll call vote, please.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Spence,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
George Archuleta,
Yes.
Janine Houston.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other business that we need to take care of at this time? All right, it is my desire to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I move that we adjourn.
And a second?
Second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded that we adjourn. Roll call vote.
Pam Pereza,
Yes.
Rodney Walton,
Yes.
Daniel Smith,
Yes.
Dr. Sheila Williams,
Yes.
Mark Archuleta,
Yes.
Virginia Houston.
Yes.
Okay, again, I want to thank everyone for all the work, the presentations that were made, the very good discussion that we had. And I want to thank the community members for being here tonight. And I encourage you to continue coming to the meetings if they are open and becoming an active participant in the education